All right, well, hello. Hello. Nothing says innovation like PowerPoint slides, so I figured I would indulge you. So yeah, it's a really interesting introduction. I sit and listen to it, and I even feel like, what does this guy do? So what I actually do for a living is I study all of this crazy new technology, and I study its impact on business. And as a digital anthropologist, I study its impact on society, on us, our norms, our cultures, our behaviors. Because somewhere in there has to be some sense making, because things are getting crazier every single day. But what I think about more often than not is, even though I get paid by businesses to help them change and adapt and help startups come to life and take over the world, the real meaningful work is in helping us become more relevant as people, as leaders, as managers, as teachers, as students, because things are so crazy that the one frightening gap that I see happening every single day is the gap that extends between the way some of us know the world and the way that other people know the world. And this is the first generation of not only people who think and act differently, but it's also the first generation that's contagious to the generations before it. So while we used to look at things demographically, you have to now look at things psychographically, because if you study, I study teenagers and I study centennials and I study everybody really, but if you study a 55-year-old or a 65-year-old who uses an iPad and Facebook and any kind of app, you start watching how they make decisions and how they think about things and how they approach things, and their sort of perspective on life starts to match 17-year-olds. And it's super interesting, and I called it Generation C, Generation Connected, because it wasn't a generation bound by age anymore. It was bound by lifestyle. And that has to do with the fact that we're changing as we use technology, as we use these apps, as we use these networks. We're literally at the center of our own universe, and we become more informed as a result. And becoming more informed, you become more empowered, and when you become more empowered, you become more demanding, and when you become more demanding, well, a lot of things happen. But in these slides, it's almost a little warning. There are things that I'm going to share with you that are going to make you shake your head. I'm sure there's going to be things that you want to raise your fist and say, no. But at the end of the day, these are things that are happening. And the best we could do is understand it. And once you start to understand it, you can open up and maybe do something about it. Because really, the common thread in all of my research, technology aside, is this is all about relevance, right? You either earn it or you don't. And the thing about today is that relevance has never been so wonderful, but also so difficult. Because everything that we know, everything that a lot of us, especially for us who are a little bit older, everything that we sort of strive for in our life, everything that we were taught to value, all the things that we were taught to do, like get married and have children and buy 2.3 cars and buy a house, all of those things are now no longer defined as success. That's not success anymore. Those aren't the ambitions that everybody has anymore. The idea of ownership is even quickly losing value. So walk with me through the world. This is a funny slide, because on one side we think that that's what the zombie apocalypse looks like, and on the other side is what people swear the zombie apocalypse is. And it's just a funny way of observing that people are different, right? And the first thing that we tend to do is judge it, right? Like put your phone down kind of thing. And that's the wrong thing to do. Because what we're saying in that action, what we're saying by that judgment is we're saying, you need to be more like me. And to earn relevance, it's the opposite. We need to be more like them. Because otherwise it's us versus them. And if you look at historic evolutions of technology throughout time, there's always that thing that we judge, right? Whether it's newspapers, whether it's radio, whether it's television, there's always something. And we always tend to look back at it through our own filter, right? So just psychologically, we get in our own way. And in a time of disruption, because there's disruption everywhere, in this great time of disruption, it is perspective that is a great gift that allows us to be innovative, right? Because otherwise we just keep reacting to it the same way that all the other generations keep reacting to it, and then suddenly we sound like our parents, and we sound like our grandparents. And this is a really amazing time, and I'll share more as we go along here, but this is a really amazing time for not only innovation, but innovation can come from anywhere and anyone, right? While we place maybe an inordinate amount, but a great amount of hope on our children, that same amount of hope has to go to each and every single one of us, right? Because the expertise that we have, many of us have, is quickly eroding in terms of value. We have to fight for relevance even in our own roles as we continue to grow up, right? My motto is this: I will never claim to be an expert in anything. I will always claim to be a student, because this is a time of great learning. What's happening now is something I call digital Darwinism, right? Technology and society evolve. It just does, right? And with that, a lot of things happen. What doesn't happen as quickly is our ability to change or recognize change, right? If you look at business models, they're still rooted in the same principles of like 60 years or 70 years of doing business. The infrastructure of business, the whole idea of management, the whole idea of human resources is so archaic, right? It's like turning on the TV. You go back in time today, but yet society and technology continue to evolve. And what happens is you either react or you lead or you don't, and time moves on, right? There was a moment in all of our lives where the Kodak Moment actually meant something, right? Elicits nostalgia and goosebumps, and you think about the photograph and the idea that one of the greatest brands in the whole wide world failed to recognize digital Darwinism. Right? It was 1979 that an engineer presented to the executive board the Kodak-owned patents for digital photography. And I think the reaction was something like, "That's cute. Never bring it up again." And in hindsight, you can watch that moment just play out. Right? You can see that moment where the company stopped fighting for relevance, continued with what they know and what they do best, because they lost sight of who was important and why, right? Because like most organizations, we tend to overvalue the role of shareholders and stakeholders on what we do, right? When in fact, those who put up a big middle finger to them and look at the people who really count, they always win. And stakeholders and shareholders benefit as a result. Mark Zuckerberg once said something, and I'll keep it clean, F Wall Street. I need to focus on user experience. If I focus on user experience, Wall Street profits. And sure enough, it's right. And it's historically, any company that focuses on a higher purpose always outperforms companies or organizations that don't. The new Kodak Moment is now something that I'm trying to move to redefine in business school to be that moment where you fail to compete for relevance. The Kodak Moment is the minute you lose sight of what it is that you're trying to do. And this moment is happening over and over and over again, and it's only accelerating. And this is the scary stuff, but this is the stuff that we have to remind ourselves that this is why we all have to change, not just as individuals, but also as in all that we do. This is the minute Netflix overtook Blockbuster. You could see that it wasn't overnight. It happened over years. It's a great story, actually. Reed Hastings, who's the CEO, founder of Netflix, came up with the idea for Netflix after getting a $40 late charge for Apollo 13. Could you imagine that moment? The clerk assessed that fee. Here you go, sir. It's $40 late fee, and sealing the fate of his company, his employer. But the greatest the greatest irony of this is that Reed eventually came back to the board at Blockbuster and said, look, how about you let me do this side of the business, right? Ultimately leaning towards online distribution of video streaming. And they still said no, right? So you kind of think, well, you got what you deserve, but at the same time, though, this is not uncommon. This happens over and over and over again because what you think you're competing for, who you think your customer is today, who you think your employees are and what they value today is not what it is tomorrow, right? And you could do that same map for Borders and Amazon. You could do the same thing for Uber and the taxi industry. It's all playing out in real time. And it has everything to do with perspective. I study technology all day, every day. I live in Silicon Valley. I can't get away. I can't even go to my coffee shop and not hear about the latest startup. But it's never about technology. It's about the idea that went into the technology, about what they were trying to solve or what it was that they were trying to create. It's always a very human story. So it's really about perspective. How do you see the world and what do you want to do about it? And nothing says it better than this picture. This is a culture clash, right? And when this picture went viral, the debates online were fascinating. See, this is what's wrong with society. Put your phones down and enjoy the moment, like her. So my reaction was, well, look at her. She's so selfish, deciding not to share this moment with all her Facebook fans. And you recognize that what we're really seeing is that neither side is wrong. They're all living the moment. They're just doing it their way, right? One has greater reach, to be honest, and potentially greater influence, but it's all the way that they want to live the moment. So whatever we do in our own roles or in our own work has to be able to cater to a changing society that we can't judge. We have to understand. Because when you don't judge, when you see things for how they can evolve, when you look at the magnificence of technology, new things happen when you're trying to do human-centered things, right? So Uber didn't start with the explicit goal of taking out the taxi industry. It just was basically a confluence of real-time technology, social, and mobile. Comes together in an app and allows people to make a car come to them. It's fascinating, right? No one took an Uber because they love taxis. Just saying. Can't even get one in San Francisco, which is ridiculous, actually. Or New York. Do you know that New York taxi shifts are at 8 and 5? Kind of when you need them. But all the cabs are off duty. When I was in Australia a few weeks ago, I saw this billboard. Ride sharing, it's no safer than hitchhiking. I about lost it because it's sponsored by the Australian taxi company. So I called them out. I took this to Twitter, I took it to Instagram, I took it to Facebook. Why would I do that? It's not just because it's social media. It's because on those 3 platforms, I have 600,000 people that I connect to like that. So it's kind of an audience. They didn't like my response. They said, well, what about all of the people who are injured in Uber taxis because of drivers who are not responsible? I said, yeah, it sounds like you're employing scare tactics. I see this all the time in politics. It sounds fascinating. Here's some data for you. Here are all the criminal reports of taxi drivers who have actually hurt their passengers. And it's pretty scary. And I started publishing that more and more and more because this is not right. That's not how you fight innovation. That's not how, no one, again, took an Uber because they love taxis. So that's the wrong argument. Scaring people, that's ridiculous, but we do that very well because we resist change, right? These are taxi drivers all over the world. This was in France just over the summer. All around the world, this is how the taxi industry responds to innovation. Again, like Netflix and Blockbuster, like Borders and Amazon, Kodak, these are not things that happen overnight. This is a long time in the making. The taxi industry had every minute of every year to think about changing the business model, changing the experience, investing in technology, but they didn't, right? And so one of the things we talked about earlier today is that a lot of Uber's funding doesn't go to technology or marketing. It goes to fight politics. They have hired some of the best lobbyists in the country to change regulation because the taxi lobbyists are using regulation to fight Uber and to prevent them from coming into their cities. The same thing is happening for Tesla. A lot of states are not allowing Tesla to sell their cars through their own stores because the franchise lobbyists are saying that you have to use franchises to sell cars. And Elon Musk says, why would I do that? Show me someone who loves the dealership car buying experience, and I'll rethink it. It's the same thing, right? So instead of embracing innovation and using it to drive things forward, we tend to fight it. We fight it as individuals, right? But the Tesla experience is beautiful. There's no pressure to buy a car. You just walk in and you marvel at the innovation that has gone into the technology. You're free to browse. It's wonderful. No pressure. Angela Earnhardt, who was the co-CEO of Burberry, who just recently, well not recently, a couple years ago, joined Apple to lead their retail innovation, said the same thing. She said, you know, the one thing about the future of retail is the experience, right? So the taxi experience versus the Uber experience, the Netflix experience versus the Blockbuster experience, the Tesla experience over the dealership experience. What's happening is that we're being groomed to expect not just products or transactions or services, we're being groomed to expect complete experiences, right? And all of these things that are fighting innovation and disruption are the same things that are holding back progress, right? I was joking earlier, the fact that we're debating and arguing and spending so much energy on red cups at Starbucks is ridiculous. You only have so much energy. You only have so much passion. And there's a lot that we need to do in this world, from education to change to whatever it is that we all believe in. But we tend to talk ourselves out of it. Anything new that comes along, it's funny, this is just a cartoon that basically says, I keep hearing all this stuff, but I need to go find the truth. And you psychologically find the very thing that validates why you shouldn't change. And therefore, you're convinced that one link changed it. By the way, this is the same sort of problem that the medical industry is having, because everyone's also going to Google to self-diagnose their issues, and they all find out that they're all dying. Have you noticed, like, every one of those symptoms? If you're nauseous, if you feel achy, like, I have Ebola. But this is the thing about innovation that is the most remarkable. It's human. It's always human. Technology is an enabler of this idea of what it is you want to do, what it is that you want to accomplish. That's why this is amazing. This is an amazing time to be alive, because you could actually do anything. You can get funding from anywhere. You can almost have anything done for fractions of what it used to cost, even when I was coming up in the hardware days in Web 1.0. And again, the greatest innovation starts with a shift in perspective, how you see the world and how you appreciate it differently. In the conversation we had, I shared this little secret, so don't give it away for those who are here. I hear this all the time. You can't look at people to innovate, because they'll just tell you what they want and maybe they don't know what they need, right? And there's validity to that. But there's also great validity in challenging convention. especially in a time of innovation and disruption, right? Because if we don't disrupt, we will be disrupted. It's just that simple. It keeps happening over and over and over again. So you know what I started to do? I just started to take nothing for granted. I just started questioning everything. If you're going to use that to prevent innovation, like this quote, or for example, another one is Steve Jobs never did market research. It's like, oh, okay, first of all, you're not Steve Jobs. Second of all, it's not what he said. And Henry Ford didn't say this either. Yet, we keep saying he said that. But what he did say is if there's one secret to success, it's to shift perspective. It's get someone else's point of view and add it to your own, right? You're supposed to be inspired. And that's what Steve Jobs did. He was inspired by the challenges and frustrations that people had with technology, and he found ways to make it better. He just saw potential. And that was the difference between having an idea and bringing an idea to life. What you're looking at is a new art series. It's actually really awesome. It's a photographer who is photoshopping out the phones from people's hands. So how we can kind of see what these moments look like without phone. Because with phone, it makes sense. But this is why I call it the ecosystem. Right? Because in that screen is a whole new world. And that world is marvelous because in that world, you are the star, right? And your networks and all of the sharing that happened within it remind you that you're actually human. You're not a zombie. You're probably connected to people. I think most of us are connected to at least 12 different countries. I have friends through these networks. So we're getting this globalized perspective. We're getting this global culture. Our reach has been never more profound. So these friendships, these relationships, the whole idea of being informed through these screens is incredibly human. It's just different, right? So telling me to put this down and telling me to be in the moment, I mean, I am in the moment. In fact, I'm so in the moment that I'm probably having a greater impact right now than you looking at the parade. It's just different. This is a funny picture because it is an example of how we tend to say exactly, right? See, that's the problem. But to them, it really is the best party ever, and I bet you that they're telling each other that right now. It's the best party ever. I know, right? Selfie. Post it. But the thing about this moment is so fantastic is because they're probably not just celebrating it there, right? They're celebrating it with everybody who they're connected to. So they're bringing together real life moments around the world in real time, and it is the standard. It is the new working standard. So the ecosystem, it's not a bad thing. It is a thing that we have to understand in order to drive the right kind of innovation that doesn't just react to this, it leads this. And nothing could be truer, for example, than education. Right? It's just different. For anybody who's used Tinder, the whole idea of swiping right is amazing, but it's like an Uber. You can order companionship by swiping right maybe 6,000 times in one night and hoping for that one connection. This is the best cover of Wired I've seen in a long time. For those who don't know what that means, sounds like a couple of you do. That's emoji for let's have sex. And we're curious to see what the response is, but it's analog. I mean, two characters. Isn't that crazy? That's what it's come down to. I grew up learning how to write prose and poetry, and this is, to me, I could say, what is going on? But now I've had to learn how to write sentences in 140 characters. But think about that, though. Think about each and every one of us. It's not just kids. It's each and every one of us. Those who have iPhones or Droids or any kind of smartphone. You look at that thing on average 1,500 times a week, right? Which kind of averages about 177 minutes a day. Do you know what's happening to your brain every one of those minutes? You are reprogramming it. You are also becoming far more impatient, far more demanding, far more informed, and you expect everything now to work this way. Think about that for a minute. You can call a car, you can swipe right on a date. Why wouldn't every business or government or school operate the same way? And that's the magic that lies ahead. Is all of the processes, all of the things that we cherish and reinforce every single day are being completely erased from the bottom up. Because this is more efficient. It's easier to do this. It's much more natural. Yet we force people every single day to go outside what it is that they do and how they do it, to comply with stuff that we just can't seem to get around to change, or fight that we should. And that's why there is so much disruption. Do you know that, this is hilarious, people probably are going to laugh at this, but do you know that selfies are a form of communication? A lot of us think that it's a narcissistic move. I mean, you have some selfie sticks for crying out loud, but it is a human emoticon, right? The average teenager will have sent, I don't know, maybe 30 Snapchats before lunch. And each of those are to communicate what I'm doing, what I'm feeling, where I'm at, right? And do you know that selfies are the most influential form of marketing that there is? What's she wearing? What is that? Where's he at? To the point where Snapchat just revised its terms and agreements for you, terms of services, to know that they might start selling advertising against your selfies because it's incredibly influential. And that's why this is a time, it's frustrating, right? Because a lot of us grew up being taught and learning how to do certain things. And for someone like me to come here and say, hey, we got to relearn, let's go, it sucks, right? I didn't want to have to learn how to redo my job. I'm an author. I've written 7 books. And I have to relearn how to write books now, right? I thought I kind of made it. No, I got to start all over again. So I've learned to shift from sympathy to empathy, to appreciate life as lived through others and live it that way so that I can immerse myself, or in the social science world, go native, as they say. This is an app. It's a metaphor, but it's also an app. It's called Text and Walk. Turns the camera on your phone. Allows you to safely navigate hallways and streets. Brilliant, safety concerned solution, saving lives everywhere. It's also not the most popular app because, if you think about it, it is ridiculously difficult to keep your arms up like this for a long period of time. It's easier to do this. But when you start thinking differently, when you start seeing differently, you can be sort of inspired to do things that are brand new, like doesn't even exist. How many of you love calling customer service? Right? No one. I get so anxious. I have to sit down and have a glass of wine before I call my cable service provider. Because you got to dig in, right? You know that you're going to be dropped a couple times. You're going to get that one representative who's not having the best day. So now here's an app for that. All you want to call customer service, we'll do for you. They're catering to people in the ecosystem. All of these services are going to start to remind us that we're the most important person in the world. And as a result, this is having huge effects on everything, right? What's a TV? Well, some of you are going to argue with me that it's something you put on your wall and you watch channels and movies on it. To other people, it's a phone, and they watch television in 3-minute bursts on YouTube, or 12-second bursts on Instagram, or 6-second bursts on Vine, whatever it is. So now the cable industry is freaking out because people are cutting the cord, right? They're losing customers in the throes, which is why the Comcast and the Time Warners of the world are starting to invest in micro content, like the way Netflix is, or the new Apple TV is, so that you can have content, not 3,000 channels with nothing ever to watch. Landlines, right? Whew. Last generation is in this room to have home phones, right? And what are we going to do with all those jacks around the house? It's got to do something. I think I'll turn them into USB chargers. Or the idea of music, right? Last generation in this room to buy albums. Isn't that crazy? Yet the record industry hasn't figured this out yet. They still see streaming as the devil. Yet they're the ones, I don't know if you've ever seen, I've presented on the future of music and I studied this quite a bit. Do you know that money's actually going to the record companies from streaming services? It's just not making it to the artists. It's huge, huge percentage is staying right in there. Or ask anyone, hey, who are the top celebrities in the world? And you'll see that, what do we have? 6 of the top 9 here are YouTube and Vine stars. Who are these people? Well, they're also making millions a year to the point where this is the new celebrity, right? Or all of the effects that this tech is having on folks and the pressure of society that we place on them, like college debt and low-paying jobs when you get out of college, forcing millennials and other people to just rethink the whole idea of ownership. Do we need to own stuff? In fact, there's a big, big, big movement that has the mantra that all I need is less. And if you think about what all of this stuff is doing to economics, right? You're getting all this new supply, which is creating all this new demand, which is influencing all this new behavior, which is then creating a whole social commerce infrastructure of curation, right? Now you get to be as highly selective as you want to be. All based on reputation, right? Think about your Uber driver, your Lyft driver, and trust. Oh, reputation and trust being the source of economics on the horizon? You mean like people doing business with people and getting to know them and building relationships all over again? Look at what technology is doing to us. It's making us more human, reminding us that all those things that we got to watch growing up, like runaway capitalism and recession after recession and waste and global warming, are now things that are starting to be the burdens that other generations are starting to pick up after. This is why philanthropic capitalism is a big deal, like Warby Parker and Charity Water and Tom's Shoes. And this is why you see a ton of downsizing and why you see things like relationships being pushed off, or you see things like marriage taking on a whole different meaning, or religion. There's all kinds of things that are starting to be completely rethought. Sustainability is part of life. People are, I don't do this, but a lot of people are not eating meat like they used to. And just all of this stuff is affecting every single traditional industry out there. All of this stuff, disruptions everywhere. So the blockbuster moments, the Kodak moments, they're happening to everything, everything. It's just where that disruption event is on their horizon, it's coming, right? But the effect is also so much greater. The Uber economy, or whatever you want to call it, is giving rise to what we call permalancers, or the gig economy, which means that more people are taking these side gigs and not taking full-time gigs because full-time gigs don't necessarily work with them, because they don't work with them because the culture of the company isn't something that they could relate to. The effects of all of this are so great and so sweeping that we have no choice but to study it, and we have no choice but to change, right? You know, the greatest hurdle for any big company or organization to change is, one, there's no sense of urgency to do it, but two, because they don't have the culture to do it. Because like businesses and customer relationships, our employee relationships are equally a mess, right? Morale has actually, since it's been studied, has never been so low. Unhappiness is through the roof, and it really is because we don't understand what people value, what makes them happy, how do they want to work, and how do they contribute to that. Because we live in this world where on one side of the sidewalk, you can walk without your phone in your hand, and the other one is a cell phone free lane, right? One probably gets you there a lot faster and safer. The other one's a little bit more entertaining. But no matter what we do with all of this technology, it's not going to matter, right? It's not the savior, it's not the answer, it's just an effect. It's an enabler. It's the infrastructure, it's the perspective, it's the philosophies, it's the processes, it's all of these things that are ripe for innovation in order to be innovative. And that starts with thinking about how we work, how we think, how we reward thinking, how we reward risk. Risk is a bad thing. Every culture I ever study is risk averse. But that's not how you innovate. And that is intentionally blank. That's what we've come to, is that moment where you say, what if we could do this from scratch, right? Uber had that luxury when they thought about transportation. Airbnb had that luxury when they thought about hospitality. Every startup is getting millions or billions of dollars because they have the luxury of thinking from a fresh perspective, from a clean slate. We can complain about that because we don't have that opportunity, but you do, right? So I study companies who are forming innovation centers, innovation teams, innovation groups. All their work starts with culture, but they task these smaller groups with starting with clean slates so that they're not affected by the rest of the organization. Innovation is something that's deeply personal, and it has to start somewhere. If you're waiting for innovation to come from the top, it's very rare that that's going to happen anytime soon, right? In the best cases that I study over and over and over again, innovation comes from the middle. It comes from you. It comes from you leaving here saying, that is crazy, and I'm going to do something about it. So there's what we think we know, and there's always aspiration. We always know where we want to go. But the gray matter in between that is what we have to sort of fill in. Because there's how we were taught to go through life, and there are ways that people are hacking that, right? And if you just think quite simply what a difference in perspective can lead to, it's beautiful. It's even beautiful in the most simplest of things. I mean, just look at how long it took us to figure out ketchup. Right? And everybody, you know you had that, or maybe you were that person who always had a strategy for ketchup, right? 45-degree angle. Oh, hit the soft part of your hand. All it took was a shift in perspective to say, why do we do that, right? Why do we do that? Or why do we click this? Only some of us have seen that. It's ridiculous how much we take for granted in our day-to-day life when there's an opportunity to just start fresh because the times necessitate it. Some of us know that that's a disk. Some of you think it's a save icon. That's where we need to start. Hey, ever seen one of these before? Wow, you made a 3D print of the save icon. It's that basic. It's ingrained in us, the two sides of how we see everything, right? Or this. This is probably the greatest example of what happens when you don't start from scratch. 4K televisions, curved glass, big screen displays, and every single one of them ships with this. That's ridiculous. Do you know that this is bigger than us saying, oh yeah, that sucks, I hate my remotes. It's an example of how we attempt to attack innovation today, right? And it's an example of how we just iterate based on what we know and the values of what we deem as success. And so what ends up happening is that you build upon chaos to only deliver something that sucks. So I studied it. Like, what went wrong with remote controls? Like, that's ridiculous now in hindsight. So this is an infographic I put in my book. Since the 1950s, they got worse and worse and worse, every iteration, to the point where the first app to control your television, like, what a wonderful opportunity to innovate with a blank slate. It was literally a new slate. It was a remote control with buttons. You know, the average number of buttons on a remote control is 70. We have color coding now. We have backlit keys now. Woo. A week ago, Apple introduced the new Apple TV, and it is the first remote that's truly innovative because it has a touchpad. It works the way you use your phone and everything else in life. It even has Siri, which is fantastic. But this is really what it comes down to. I mean, when you leave here today, you have some real awesome choices to make. Iteration, innovation, and disruption. These are three things that are happening every single day in your world and in the worlds around you, and you're all merging together. And you have to think about what it is that you really need to do. Do we want to do the same things better? Do we want to do new things? Or ultimately, do we need to do things that make all the old things obsolete? Because I guarantee you that if you use Uber or Instacart, that you're not going back to the way things were, right? Do you know that Amazon is investing in and already trying to get clearance for drone delivery routes, right? It's not a joke. It's because the on-demand economy, wanting things now, is a real big deal, right? And so you have to take those three things and you have to think about, well, what do I do? If I continue as is and just say, well, you know what, I'm getting too old for this, so I'm just going to buy my time. Well, you by default just compete for irrelevance, right? Your disruption event is on the horizon and it's accelerated. You compete for the moment, which means you just keep reacting to all these trends, which is exhausting, to be honest. Or you just simply compete for the future. And to do that, you have to start taking bold moves and changes inside the organization. It all starts with perspective. And everything can be questioned. Everything is the floppy disk in your organization. Everything is the remote control in your organization. We've just kept building upon it over the years, and now it's time for some innovation, because innovation unlocks new value. That's kind of how it works. And to be innovative, you have to take risks. And to take risks, you have to feel safe and rewarded to do so instead of punished for taking risks. Instead of fearing that you might fail, right? It's counterintuitive, but this is exactly what businesses are investing in. The best businesses are investing in innovation centers all around the world, mostly Silicon Valley, to gain access and exposure to new technologies. And number two is to learn about people. Isn't that crazy? Guarantee you're not going to learn about normal people in Silicon Valley, but you're going to learn about people. And this is a revolution of relevance, right? Because everything you learn is going to inspire you to think differently about your products and your services and how you earn relationships and loyalty, the experiences that you create, the trends that you drive, all driven by these satellites of inspiration, collaboration, insight, community, innovation, right? The idea of testing and learning faster and faster and faster. This is what the best companies are doing, right? Whether they're startups or whether they're big businesses acting like startups. Because through all this crazy tech, you actually learn a lot about people. You learn about their aspirations and their compromises and their routines and their interests. All of these things are magical, right? And all it takes is someone to create an architecture to deliver those experiences. Do you know that in the movie The Matrix, Tron, and Inception, they all shared an architect character? And their job was to understand people and to build these new worlds where people could thrive. And that's really what it comes down to. But you have to get to know people and appreciate how they see the world as save icons, not floppy disks, right? This is Airbnb. And how many of you have used Airbnb? Holy moly, wow, that's a lot. I asked that question a year ago, and it's like one hand. Airbnb recently went through a complete renaissance, and it's a startup. And for a startup to already go through a complete renaissance is a pretty big deal. So what triggered it? Well, what triggered it was one of the founders was on a flight during the holidays and decided to read the biography of Walt Disney. And in the book, Walt Disney talked about how they created the whole concept of storyboards for Snow White, because it was going to be the first major animation feature film. And to create animation, right, took a lot of time and resources, very expensive. So they came up with the whole concept of storyboarding so that they could, as a group, test the characters, test the storyline. Is it believable? Is it meaningful? Does it move you? Do you love these characters? Do you hate these characters? Do they come to life? And they're able to play that out all through the storyboarding process. It's one of the reasons why they still do storyboarding at Disney and Pixar today. It's also one of the reasons why it takes 4 years to make a movie there, because they spend all of their time building this out so it matters, right? And that's why you love, maybe some of you don't, but why you love Pixar and Disney movies. So Airbnb brought in a Pixar artist to lead them through the storyboarding process. And in this case, their characters were their customers. And they learned that they had to think about 2 different types of customers: the people who host Airbnbs and the people who stay at Airbnbs. And they brought these characters to life. They used a lot of data that they had. They went and got new data too to just better inform them. And they were able to put together these storyboards that allowed them to see what the Airbnb journey was like for both of their customers. They learned a ton. Like, for example, the journey doesn't begin for the user when they arrive at the Airbnb. The journey is driving, the journey is flying. There's a whole lot of stressful things that inspired them to say, you know what owners should do is they should aspire to this code of experience so that when someone arrives, this is the playbook, this is the guide they need, that you want them to feel serenity. And it allowed them to not only rebrand the company, but they built a whole community around their owners. They even have a conference for their owners. And it allowed them to basically see people differently in order to drive innovation. And that kind of innovation is happening all over the place. This is Amazon Echo. Anybody have an Amazon Echo? Yeah? I love it. I love it. Do you know that it's a speaker you could talk to? Alexa, what's the weather today? Alexa will answer back, like a Siri-like experience. Alexa, play this album for me. And we all say, wow, it's a smart speaker. How cool. Aha, that's not what it is. It's a smart delivery device. Amazon, reorder the dog food. Oh, I see your order right here. It's on its way. Same card? Yep. Brilliant. Keeps you closer to Amazon. There's a service that was founded by a few folks that exited Facebook as billionaires that started a group called Operator. An Operator is a human concierge service because we're all accidental narcissists, and they believe that you don't want to do certain things, like call customer service. So now anything you want to do in life, there's an app for that. Literally, an app for that. So there's innovation that's coming up in new ways because they see the world differently. And what we stand at here is an intersection between technology, brand, aspiration, and achievement, right? Or like Steve Jobs once said when I think he introduced the iPhone, said, we stand at the intersection of technology and liberal arts. That's what Apple does very well. Which means that technology has to be matched by humanities, by social science, by shifts in perspective to see people differently than the way we see ourselves. This is the new CEO of Capitol Records. One of the first things he did to try to reinvent Capitol Records was take down all the posters and cardboard cutouts of the Beatles and the Beach Boys and all those gold records, because he said every time our employees walked in and out of that building, they were reminded of the past, and that world no longer exists. This is what technology looks like. You don't see it. It's very human, it's very experiential, it's beautiful, yet on her wrist is one of the most sophisticated devices in the Internet of Things world. It's tracking all of her movements, wherever she goes, how long she's stationary, and it allows Disney to improve the park experience, to rethink imagination, because all she sees is, I can get into the park with this. I can open my hotel door with this. I can pay for my lunch with this. And Disney gets better with all of this data to the point where in the app, you can make reservations for a restaurant in the park. They know you're in the vicinity because it's tracking you. And it knows what you wanted, and it tells you where you're sitting. It's amazing of all of this stuff that happens, and some of you are saying that's totally freaky. Right? We call it the freaky line. It has an official term. That freaky line, here's the thing about that freaky line. It's different for every one of you. Because some folks think that that's awesome. In fact, they want more of that stuff. And some of you are like, that's invading my privacy. Well, no, it's not. Because what is privacy today, right? You walk across that street and accidentally dent that car, and I guarantee you someone has closed caption TV footage of it. You just got nailed. So yeah, it's different, but privacy is user defined. And intentions count for everything. It's not going backwards, right? It's only going to keep pushing the freaky line. So look, this is really what it comes down to. All of these things are going to happen. They're all happening, right? We just have a choice in what we do about it. And what I would like for you to do is forget this saying. I hate this saying. This saying, I hear it all the time. People tell it to me. You got to think outside the box. And you know what that does? It puts you in another box. Okay. Am I still governed by all the same rules? Am I still judged and measured the same way? There is no box. None of this stuff is the remote control. All of this disruption is happening because people are rethinking how you would control a television in today's day and age. The same is true for life. The same is true for work. The same is true for learning. We hold ourselves back. We actually delay progress by investing in iteration. This is a time for innovation. And innovation isn't some gift you're born with. It's like a muscle. The more you try, the more you're conditioned to try, the more you're rewarded for trying. Right? It's like positive conditioning. The better your ability to think, the better your ability to invent. This is where the future of business begins, because everybody can be an innovator. The future of education can unfold because anyone can be an innovator. And it has to come from somewhere. It has to come from people who believe that something new is possible, or who are not okay with the way things are, or who are scared because they don't know the answers. But at the end of the day, with the right intention, with the right beliefs, with the right passion, you just get the answers. That's all I do every single day, is I look for answers. And the one thing I've learned over and over and over again is that innovation isn't a thing. Innovation is an emotion. You feel it. You want to do something about it. And that's why, technology aside, when you leave here today, remember one thing, that innovation is always and will always start right here. Thank you very much.